Good evening. I'm Eve filling in for Hattie. On tonight's episode of The Ball is Round, we break down the Canadian men's national team's first away win against the US since 1957. All that and a lot more on episode 194 of The Ball is Round. And hello. I am joined by, of course, Elias, who is back from his vacation, enjoying other soccer stadiums, other atmospheres, all that good stuff. Welcome back.
Thank you. Very happy to be back.
Yes. So we are without Hattie and Andy tonight. Both of them should be back next week. I think that they were just too sad that tonight is actually my last episode of The Ball is Round. And so they couldn't make it because, we didn't want to have any tears on tonight's episode.
No promises.
Exactly. Now we'll hold down the fort. And how serendipitous is it? Because I do get to end my tenure on The Ball is Round, not harping about a loss as we've done so much this season, but we get to talk about a really, really exciting win. Of course, it's a friendly, so we will temper our enthusiasm for the Canadian men's national team.
Speak for yourself.
Pardon you? I'm sorry. I thought you meant you weren't happy about the win. And I was like,
no, about the tempered.
What's wrong with you?
Excitement. Obviously, heartbroken, but I meant the tempered, enthusiasm. No,
okay, my apologies. You know what? Okay, fine. Well, we can have a party. It's all good. You know what? We got to take our wins where we can. I think this year in 2024, if this year in football has taught us anything.
Exactly.
So you know what? Then let's break out the national anthem, the whole 9 yards. Let's get some maple syrup. Someone go find a beaver.
That's what's in here. That's what's in here. It's maple syrup.
Proper thing. All right. So obviously a very exciting win for the Canadian men's national team yesterday. Elias, neither you nor I had ever seen them win against the U.S. In the U.S. because it hasn't happened in 67 years.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I had thought to myself when they went 2-0 up, I was like, okay, it's probably been a while, and I thought, maybe I'll look up at. It seemed like a whole lot of work to do on my phone while watching a game, so I didn't really want to. And then I heard 9:15, 57. I was like, there's no way that's right, but
I know it was wild. Obviously, probably we can talk a little bit about the context of it after, because definitely I think Canada has faced much stronger and much more settled US national team sides than they faced yesterday. But of course, against your neighbor, one of your greatest rivals, it always feels good to stick it to them at home. 100%.
Well, we say always as if this hasn't happened for the first time in like 60 years. But yes, it always feels nice.
We've squeaked out a couple of draws here and there. I think we're almost taking those as moral victories. Yeah. But so let's talk about it, because obviously Jesse Marsh started, I think, his Canadian men's national team tenure with some really positive vibes, despite not necessarily getting a lot of results. I think we were seeing a lot of soccer that was really interesting from his teams. And of course was playing against some opposition unlike anything Canada had ever played against in recent memory. So I think they were standing up against really tall orders. And of course, they were now going to kind of play a familiar foe who they had gotten a few results over in recent years. So I think this was going to be a really interesting match. So shall we take a look at how he lined up his starting 11? All right. So we had a Max Crepeau in net. As our left and right backs, we had Alistair Johnston and captain Alphonso Davies. We had a center back pairing of Moise Bombito and Derek Cornelius. Steve Eustachio, of course, was a mainstay in that midfield, with Mathieu Choinière getting the start next to him, wearing number 8, of course, same as another iconic Canadian men's national team player, Patrice Bernier. Then up front, we had Ali Ahmed, Jacob Schaffelberg, and a duo tandem of Kyle Larin and Jonathan David. Unsurprising. Any surprises for you in the starting 11?
Well, I don't think I don't think anyone expected Matryoshvili to maybe
Mhm.
start, especially because there's like you said, some more established names on that list that ended up on the bench.
Yeah.
Um, but it was great, he's absolutely deserving with, Ismail Kone not fit.
Mhm.
Um, you need that kind of box to box presence, that, Swiss Army knife, and I think that
Mhm.
he probably has all the tools needed to be a really good counterpart for Steven Eustachio, and
Mhm.
we'll
And we'll
talk about it
talk
later, but he
yeah.
showed it, right? So
Yeah.
I was thrilled.
Yeah, and it was really interesting as well to see Ali Ahmed because, of course, he's had some injury concerns this season, and it's kind of prevented him maybe from participating in more Canadian men's national team action after getting his first initial caps kind of earlier in the Moro Biello stint. Um, so it's also really interesting to see him kind of get a start for one of his very early looks with Jesse Marsh. But nonetheless, I was still really excited to see what he could bring because we've seen so much positivity. I think both for club and country with him.
Yeah.
All right, so let's take it position by position as we always do. Maxime Crépeau, a little bit of a quieter night than we might have expected for, of course, Maxime Crépeau. But what did you make of his performance on the night?
Yeah, I think that was more of a testament to just how good that back line was that we're gonna get into later, but, he did everything that was asked of him, right? And that even that one goal was it offside? Was it not offside? It looked offside.
Hmm.
So I again, that was point blank. You can't really fault him for that. But in general, right? He ran his back line. He ran his penalty area like the Navy, like he always does. And I think that
Hmm.
that's kind of the mark of a really good national team keeper who can kind of just step in and immediately, if even if you guys haven't played together in a couple months, immediately have everybody running properly. And
Yeah.
yeah, he's a really, really vocal presence, and just watching him on television, even if it's muted, you could see the way he commands
Hmm.
everything in front of him. So that's it's nice to see that we've always said that we need him to eventually take up the mantle from Milan Borjan
Hmm.
and have it sooner rather than later, and it looks like he stepped in really, really, really confidently.
Yeah, for sure, and I did feel like he was, like, willing to kind of lay down some of that CONCACAF swagger, kind of especially towards the end of the match. It felt like, it did feel like a very, I felt, veteran performance from him, even though, of
Mhm.
course, he hasn't been really the number 1 for very long with Canada. He still has been a part of the system for a very, very long time. But I did think overall, like, it was a very mature performance from Maxime Crépeau, and like you said, a lot happened on the goal that Canada conceded, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But yeah, hard to fault him for that for sure. All right, on to our backline. Let's maybe start with Alistair Johnston, just because we did only get 25 minutes from him.
Yeah.
So not as much content kind of to talk about. He had to leave unfortunately through injury, and he has also since been replaced by Sam Adekugbe, who was initially called up and pulled out through injury, but is now back in the squad. But obviously, we hope that's not a serious injury, as always. What did you make of the brief showing that we got from Alistair Johnson last night or
Yeah, I mean, look,
afternoon?
there's a reason he's arguably the most informed
Mhm.
um, player on that national team right now, and it's because he's just at game in, game out. He's so reliable,
Yeah.
right? What you want and what you expect out of Alistair Johnson is exactly what you're gonna get.
Mhm.
You might get a little bit better, but you very rarely get worse. So
Mhm.
that baseline he set is so high, and he's been able to continuously deliver with Celtic, with Canada. It's it's really refreshing seeing him in his natural position as well, seeing them as a 4 back, seeing him not as a right side center back, not as a right wing back, but as a proper right back with the proper right back responsibilities. He just looks so much more comfortable. He looks so much more at home.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the system works really well for him. I think he's exactly in the position that he needs to be at. Like, he's not being held back and he's not being asked to do an excessive amount of contribution, bombing up and down like when you're playing a wingback role. So I really like, I think, a lot of it is credit to the coach for the system that's
Mhm.
being implemented, obviously. And I think we'll probably talk on it in general, but I think with the team that is out there, particularly for the back line, I feel this suits them to a T. Like, I don't know if I've seen a formation that I like as much,
Oh,
um,
absolutely.
at least for the defense for Canada, in quite a long time. All right. Perhaps we will move to the other end of the pitch, which or the other side, which is of course Captain Alfonso Davies. It's all I think it's been kind of up and down this year for him with the national team. People can sometimes criticize him. He is still, though, head and shoulders the best player on the pitch,
Mhm.
usually on the pitch period, no matter who Canada's playing against. But what did you make of his performance? Of course, as always, he was kind of left, right, back, forth, all over the pitch.
Yeah, I feel like it was a quieter evening from him,
Yeah,
than what we're used to, and I think that's a good thing for
I
one,
agree.
because I still maintain, and as you saw it during the Copa America, and it's continued now. I think the best piece of individual coaching Jesse Marsh has done
Hmm.
was just put him at left back and
Hmm.
simplify Alfonso Davies' role,
Yeah,
because under Morobiello, under John Herdman,
he was doing everything.
all the hopes and dreams of Canadian soccer were kind
Yeah,
of placed upon his shoulders. We
yeah,
need you to play left wing, we need you to play right wing, we need you to play striker, we need you to score and assist.
yeah,
That's not what Alfonso Davies does. He's exceptional at what he does.
yeah.
And usually, players who are really, really good, who are world-class talents, when they go to a quote unquote smaller national team program, are
Hmm.
asked to do more. In
Hmm.
cases like this, simplifying his role, having him as just a proper left back and having him do what he does best makes everyone around him so much better, because he's
Agreed.
not pigeonholed into something he can't do anymore.
Or he's
So
not spread so thin that
exactly,
he's actually not contributing.
exactly. So I think that that's probably his best bit of individual coaching, was kind of
Hmm.
just saying, I need you to be a world class left back, and that's it. Right? I don't need you to do 14 other things now.
Hmm.
Trust your teammates to do the other stuff. And
Hmm.
you saw it, right? Like, when he was playing as a forward, playing as, wherever wherever John Herman or Morbiello would put him, he would end up taking too many touches. He would end up taking on too many dribbles,
Yeah.
trying shots from the
Yeah,
stuff
just
that didn't
trying to
make
be
sense.
like the person who could get the ball as close
Exactly.
to the net as humanly possible, on
Exactly.
his
And
own.
now that
Yeah.
he has, now that he has people in front of him, now that he has people to play off with, it opens up so much space for him.
Mhm.
So I think that, yeah, it was a quieter game in terms of maybe overall impact that you expect from Davies, but at the end of the day, that entire left side was completely shut down when he
Yeah.
was on the field, right? Him, you can't find a winger in the world that can beat him for pace.
Yeah.
And yeah, he has little lapses in concentration defensively, like every
Mhm.
fullback does, but he more than makes up for it. And last night, he was lights out. So, it was quiet, but I'm thrilled with his new role.
Mhm. No, I agree. I agree that the simplifying is a lot better, and I feel like hopefully, that can also kind of just straighten out some of the criticism that's been levied against him because I don't think necessarily that it's him being inherently a selfish player, like you were kind of alluding to. I think it's a matter of, everything was being placed on his shoulders
Yeah,
as the best
exactly.
player. And I mean, it's all well and good to, switch a player from left to right during a match to kind of destabilize the opponent and utilize their versatility. That's normal, but you can't just be like, you have to go here, you have to go there, you have to go everywhere. Um, so hopefully as well, maybe it's just also good for the team as a whole because it's not so much an Alfonso Davies and the rest of them. It's now more like an 11 players
Absolutely.
all in it together. So next up we have our center backs. So our center backs, Moise Bombito and Derek Cornelius, both now league arm players for Nice and Marseille, respectively. Um, I'll go ahead and start if you want on one of them,
Go for
since
it.
it's
Yeah,
just me asking you to tell you.
go for it.
I'll start with Moise Bombito. Uh, I thought he played some very risky soccer at times. At times, I was like sweating a little bit, but his ability to recover with poise and composure, um, I thought was very, very mature for somebody who is so early in his career. Like a couple of times in the first half, I think maybe he might have gotten caught a little bit unawares by like a ball over the top or whatever, but he did an amazing job of getting his body into sort of ward off the attacking player and to actually separate them from the ball. and it just felt like he was kind of putting on a show of his own defensive talents, and I really, really, really liked his performance. I really liked his Copa America, and I'm glad to see, like, it wasn't just something that happened in a bubble,
Mhm.
but it seems to be that this is obviously a different match, different circumstances, and I felt the same energy. So I'm hoping that this is something that we can consistently see and enjoy from him, especially as he's now going to be playing soccer at a higher level. What did you think
Absolutely.
though of Bombito?
About Cornelius,
Or Cornelius or whomever. Yeah, either one. If you have anything
yeah,
to add, go ahead.
well, I mean, both of them had, one thing about Moise Mobito is just his recovery is
Yeah.
so strong, right? Because like you said, right, he
Yeah.
got in some really, really hairy positions, and
Mhm.
he got himself out of trouble so effectively, and I think that, when you look at them as a center back pairing together, like, yeah, this wasn't maybe the best American team you can get, but
Mhm.
when you look at their front line, where you have Balogun, Pulisic, and Tillman, that is probably their strongest front three.
Yeah.
And, yeah, their midfield wasn't nearly as strong as they could have fielded, but in
Mhm.
terms of pure attacking power, that's as close to full strength as it gets for the US, and
Mhm.
they didn't just handle it, they kinda really just completely shrugged them aside,
Mhm.
as a back four, but specifically, in that middle, there was really nothing going on for the Americans. And, you could tell by the fact that they ended up subbing on like 5 forwards at one point towards the end of the
Mhm.
game and, still nothing. And so as a unit, and especially as this pairing, right? Like you said, sometimes during international tournaments, people hit good runs of form, and since it's
Or
on
it's
such a
just
big
kind of like
stage.
that hermetic camp that you're in, you
Exactly,
know?
right?
Yeah.
And it's almost like a flash in the pan, or people just hit that, and it's tough to replicate or maybe to kind of show consistently, but they look so good together, and they
Yeah.
look so in sync, and, when you look at the back line, even as far back as the World Cup, well, I mean, it was 2 years ago. When you look at the
Yeah.
back line versus now, it's unrecognizable, right? You have, uh, all these different components that, you know, in that back line, which was a back 5 2 years ago,
Mhm.
that really just didn't make sense and
Yeah.
was constantly kinda just barely getting by and was struggling for identity, and now you look at this, and it's very clear that Jesse Marsh has his style of play,
Yeah.
and this kind of pace and power approach that the backline has suits it perfectly,
Mhm.
because it's not the most technically, proficient back
No.
line, right? But they are so solid defensively as a 4,
And they
and when
feel
you
like
have
so in sync as well.
exactly, and when
Yeah.
you have Bombito and Cornelius, who are, yeah, they're really strong, and yeah, they're really quick, but the way they read the game together is so impressive. The fact
Yeah.
that, yeah, there were some hairy moments, but the fact that they were at worst was like a little bit of an awkward moment, which could have ended up being catastrophic, but they handled it so well for being such a, relatively new pairing and being so
Mhm.
young. So refreshing and so encouraging because, like Chan just said, the next Gold Cup, they can absolutely consider themselves favorites.
Yeah.
And
And
I think that, we're past the point of, let's try and get to semifinals and that'll be a win. No, no, no.
mhm.
You're competing for silverware now, and you're competing for a top spot because you just played the US off the pitch in their own backyard, and you're going to be playing Mexico now, and the expectation is to do the same.
Mhm.
And when was the last time you could look at the landscape of CONCACAF and be like, Canada's comfortably the best
Yeah.
team?
It's not my lifetime. Not in yours either.
Since
You're
1957.
younger than me, so no, exactly. No, definitely very, very exciting to watch. Obviously, Derek
Mhm.
Cornelius also wound up having to leave through injury and head injury. So hopefully that's nothing serious and doesn't preclude him for the next match because I really want to see more of that pairing together and see
Yeah,
what
we
they
got we
can
got we got
do.
Joel Waterman minutes out of it though, so I'm
We
not too mad at
did, we
that.
did,
Joel
we
Waterman.
did. You're correct. So okay, silver linings, I guess. Okay, next up is the midfield. Let's start with our
Mhm,
central midfielders, Steve Eustachio and Mathieu Choinière. Let's start with Eustachio since we're used to seeing him, of course, in a Canada kit. So how would you describe like, for me, honestly, I felt like we didn't see a ton of
mhm.
Eustachio, and I'm saying that in a really positive way.
What do you mean by that?
I like he wasn't like his presence on the pitch wasn't glaringly obvious. He wasn't dominating the midfield by himself. It
Mhm.
felt as though he wasn't carrying kind of like a Davy situation. He wasn't carrying the workload on his shoulders.
Yeah, and
And
I
so it
think
felt like a
yeah, I
quieter
agree.
match, but in a good way.
Yeah, 100%, and I think that's might be what I love the most about this quote unquote "new look Canadian team," is
Mhm.
that the best players aren't being asked to do everything.
Yeah.
They're winning games by committee, they're getting results by committee. It's a team effort, and I think that's probably the best indicator of where this program is going, is that they're
Mhm.
not just like, David Davies and Eustachio, and then it's in God's hands. It's,
Yeah.
all phases of play are super solid right now. And like you said, right,
Yeah.
Eustachio had a really good game. He helped set up the first goal
Yeah.
by winning the ball that high up,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like he was head and shoulders above
He
everybody.
wasn't
He was
carrying anything. He wasn't playing a Hail
exactly.
Mary
He
pass,
was
like,
just part of the group and
it was
everyone
just
was
part of your
operating
standard high press.
exactly. And
Yeah.
that's what the best players do, is they bring everyone else up to their level. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's what Davies is doing. That's what Eustachio is doing, especially in
Yeah.
that midfield now. And
Yeah.
I love it.
Mhm. But, obviously, like, Isakio, he's had a very different, style of midfielder playing with him for the past
Mhm.
year, essentially, in Ishmael Kone, who is missing these friendlies through injury, and, yesterday he had Mathieu Choinière, who is definitely a way different profile from Ishmael Kone. So how would you describe Mathieu Choinière's kind of, like, I would say, most significant minutes, in a men's national team kit?
Honestly,
As far as, like, the sheer number of minutes.
and this comes from not someone watching the national team, but someone who's been watching CF Montreal.
Yeah.
He looks like a man liberated,
Yeah.
right? Not in the sense that he's liberated from the club, but he's liberated from the situation. He looks like he's playing with no more weight on his shoulders. He looks just like he's there to play ball, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't have. You could tell there was something weighing on him since the news broke about the trade request and everything
Yeah.
like that. The last few months have been he's just looked tired,
Yeah.
right? And last night he just
Yeah.
looked for the first time. Given the fact that I don't know if he's played in Switzerland yet,
No.
but since he left Montreal, he just looks fresh. He looks like
Yeah.
the Mathieu Choinière of last year, where he
Yeah.
was even the way he was running, right? And so
Yeah.
that was a joy to see. It was a
Yeah.
little bittersweet, obviously,
Yeah.
but it was so happy to see because, um, yeah, if that's the kind of baseline Mathieu Choinière is setting, then he's going to be, he's going to keep on elevating. Because again, he's still only what 25, right? There's still, he's still got at least, 6 or 7 years ahead of him where he can operate at this level. And so I think that, it was nice to see him
Mhm.
almost be the Samuel Piet to his Mathieu Choinière in a way,
Yeah.
where he was kind of facilitating for Eustachio, and he was doing a lot of the legwork, and it was nice to show that, like, yes, I have that part of my game too, where I can do the dirty work, I can do the thankless job, and
Mhm.
then on top of that, I could be reliable in possession because, I mean,
Mhm.
he
And
was
I
super
thought he
reliable.
was a pressing machine. Like,
Exactly, exactly, and I
I
think
was just he was just glued to a US player at all times. It felt
and I
like he
just
was
know
almost made of
Jesse
rubber.
March was watching that and salivating, going, having someone like that off the bench in a game
Oh,
and having
imagine, yeah.
him for, a half an hour
Yeah,
with that kind of energy would be is perfect for him. So I think that
totally.
just this could not have gone better in terms of his standing in Jesse Marsh's hierarchy.
Yeah,
This could not have gone better for Choinière.
agree. Agree. So looking at our wide oh, and we do have a comment as well though from Holy Gale, which is topical, saying
She
Schwanya
was.
was on fire. Which he was. We agree. So looking at our players on the flank, let's start with Ali Ahmed. Hasn't had a ton of caps himself either, but so
Mhm.
be it. And actually, in hindsight, you know what? Let's circle back though, because I think we did get a question uh, on Schweiner's performance. I was just going to do questions after, but I feel like it's topical. So thank you, Elias, for reminding me of that. Let's take a look at the question that we got from Patrick, which says, what a game by Schweiner yesterday. If he keeps playing at that level for club and country, do you think he will be a grasshopper for very long? Hope he gets a move to a top 5, 6, 7 league in a year or two. So, as your podcast's resident pessimist, I'm like, slow your roll, please. That would be, I would caution a little bit of hesitation myself, but to each their own, obviously. I think it was a super, like, I'll give my perspective. I think it was an incredibly positive performance. We haven't seen him play for Grasshopper yet, who are kind of in the throes of struggle right now
Yeah.
in the Swiss league. So I think it's a little bit hard to judge how things are going to go. Definitely, I think if Mathieu Chouanière can segue at least this performance into obviously more minutes next match, and as well more call-ups and more consistent minutes under Jesse Marsch, at least speaking for that, since we can't speak yet as to how things are going with his club since he hasn't played yet. Then I think, you know, there were people who were talking about this being a lateral move for him to go to Switzerland and so on and so forth. But I could see him being able to utilize that to perhaps move to, if not, I don't necessarily think like a Manchester City or anything like that, but perhaps a league or even a team that's regularly playing in like Conference League or Europa League or something to that effect, or even, to a team that is kind of more consistent in
Mhm.
power within Switzerland even.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that it won't be immediate, especially given that, said he's 25 and he has a lot of football ahead of him, but he still is 25, right? It's not like he's 18 doing this. Um,
Mhm.
so there is that caveat nowadays that clubs are also looking at your age. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think honestly, this felt inevitable once that whole trade request was released. It felt that,
Mhm.
like, Europe was absolutely the destination because there's no way they would trade him.
Yeah,
There's no way they would lose him to another MLS team and end up playing
exactly.
against them. So I think that this was absolutely inevitable, and I think that this is, like you said, this is a club that is, in the relegation battle year in year out in Switzerland, and I think that I feel like it's almost a chance for him to take a challenge personally and maybe shine in that group,
Mhm.
because if there's one thing that he knows how to do, it's shine in a struggling group. So
Yeah, that is true.
I think that could also be a situation that feels maybe a little bit more familiar
Mhm.
than one would think. So I think that, he has everything he needs to continue his development. So, hopefully that leads to more minutes for the national team, obviously.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, and it'll be really interesting. I'll be curious to see, if he picks up some minutes, or even gets a second start, because it was a very, very positive performance, and technically they aren't necessarily swimming in central midfielders, with this particular squad that Jesse Marsch called up. I think it would be really interesting to see if he gets another start versus Mexico, because obviously that's a different beast. Yeah. Um, okay, so circling back to our original destination, Ali Ahmed, somebody else who kind of hasn't necessarily made their stamp on the men's national team yet, but who was given a really interesting chance to audition for Jesse Marsch yesterday. Has had some really positive flashes with the men's national team, but it kind of was, maybe not in the most organized system and kind of not necessarily in the most ideal circumstances. So this was maybe kind of his best moment to announce himself. And another scholar, I would say, of the Jesse Marsch high press, because he executed that with, I would say, his energy rivaled Mathieu Chouanière's energy for that press. But you go
Yeah,
ahead,
he was
Elias.
great. He brings so much on both sides of the ball. Like you said, right, his pressing was really, really strong,
Yeah.
but also in possession, he brings that kind of um that ability to play wide and stay wide that
Mhm.
makes forwards really uncomfortable, but also opens up a lot of room for your strikers, especially if you're playing with two strikers.
Yeah.
So I really like how he was kind of deployed, and I've always liked him, and him staying fit consistently is, not just for Vancouver but for Canada, is so important, because yeah, when Tejan Buchanan comes back, realistically, finally having him play not at wing back but at right wing is perfect. but having someone like Ali Ahmed to either bring competition or come off the bench
Mhm.
is, again, such an underrated asset to have, and, that performance again, the way he pressed and the way that he can take people on one-on-one and be such a headache for a left
Mhm.
back all game, I think is so, so, so important.
Yeah, I feel like he is just, like, an endless fountain of energy, I feels like he starts and he ends his match with the exact same, like, it doesn't feel like he fades in a match, which is, I think, really important. I do think there was still a couple of, like, kinda youthful errors maybe that he committed, a little bit of out of place, but also, I mean, he was able to orchestrate a few really interesting chances that just weren't converted, by virtue of his attacking, his left back, counterpart, who was, I believe, Christopher Lund and Tim Ream to a degree as well.
Yeah,
So, I was a little bit on the risky side, but I think it was definitely a very, very positive performance for him as well. And
absolutely.
all right. Over to Jacob Schaffelberg, author of the first goal for Canada yesterday. Of course, I always will proclaim my bias before going on to talk about this player because he is from the East Coast, as am I, and we don't have very many of those players in the national team setup, either currently or previously. So I am very excited about this player. So, Elias, before I go off, I will let you go first.
Yeah, Maritime King. No, it's happy to see him just like Bobito and Cornelius kind of
Yeah.
back up that good performance in Copa America. It wasn't just a flash in the pan. It was really, you know, this is me in the system working properly.
Agree. Yeah.
And he's brought his game up such another level. And he did have a lot of really good substitute appearances under John Herman and Mauro Biello. And there was definitely that little like that there was that promise there that, yeah, under the right system, he could be good, and it's so nice to see him kind of pay that off
Mhm.
because it fits like a glove, honestly, in this. He links
Yeah.
up with Davies, he links up with David, he links up with Eustachio so well,
Yeah.
and for him to kinda be at the intersection of arguably your 3 best players and having to kind of maybe put the finishing touches in some situations on being in that kind of triangle is a lot to ask of him, and
Yeah.
he's delivering every single time he's on the field. So I mean, it's such a it really is night and day from the Canada from the
Mhm.
last 2 years.
It really is, and, we did just go through another really negative, like, another negative, dip on this roller coaster that is Canadian soccer, with the whole drone gate scenario. Um, but I think, going back to this, I think talking about this match is like a very welcome positive balm, after a very tumultuous 2024 for the ball is round so far this year. But for me, Jacob Schaffelberg, I love that energy, and by energy, I mean it more so in the vibe.
Mhm,
Not so much work rate, although he does, of course, bring a great work rate. But I feel just like the attitude that he has on the pitch, it's just such a competitive attitude. It's just so gritty. It's he wants to get stuck in. He wants to be involved. He constantly works to make himself open for his teammates or to maybe try to like distract a defender to free up space for somebody else. So it just feels like he always wants to be at the heart of what's happening and contributing to that. And he's not kind of just sticking to, the prescribed midfielder,
mhm.
winger requirements, which I really, really like about him. And obviously, like you said, Copa America was sort of his big moment as it was Moise Bambito's. And I think although we definitely will want to see more still, we will always want to see more. Uh, Always promising to see, of course, that his excellent form from that competition has carried over at least for one more friendly. So really, really thrilled to see that. And of course, a very composed finish on the goal. You love to see it because, of course, one of the big criticisms I think of Canada so far in the Jesse Marsh era had been that they hadn't scored enough goals, particularly from the run of play. So obviously that's one, which was a good start, and we'll take it for sure. But we will, of course, get to our second goal imminently. All right, so we have our typical duo up top of Kyle Aaron and Jonathan David. Where would you like to start, Elias?
I think Kyle Aaron is, for
Okay.
me, the bigger headline because I
Mhm.
really did not enjoy his Copa America.
I hated
I
it.
think he was a step behind
Yeah.
all the time. He wasn't up to the pressing. He just seemed kind of unsettled,
Mhm.
and had serious doubts about his future in the system
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, what Jesse Marsh asks of you, you're either with it or you're not,
Yeah.
and it just didn't look like he was with it. So I will happily delay that verdict because he looked like a
He looked like
completely
a new
different
man
player.
yesterday.
Exactly. So I
Yeah.
don't know if it was, maybe he needed time to kind of get used to it. This was all very last minute, Jesse Marsh's inclusion. So
Yeah.
maybe it just took some time for it to really kind of
Yeah.
sink in. But the runs he was make I haven't seen him make that many runs in one game ever.
No.
He was flying. I don't know
Yeah.
what it was, the pre-match meal, or he was
Yeah, I
just,
wanna know.
because like, even without the system, he was
Yeah.
moving, he looked quicker,
Yeah.
he looked, and yeah, he forced some really good saves, and maybe
He
he's a
did.
little bit unlucky not to have actually scored,
Mhm.
but he found himself in really good spots and
And he
just
did also
all
pick
around
up an assist, which I think was really
did
important
pick
for
up a really
him.
important assist, and this might be honestly one of his best performances in a long time in a Canada
Yeah.
shirt. And it was, granted he didn't score, which is what you expect from your poacher, but just he was everywhere last night.
Yeah.
And I really, really, really think that if this is the baseline, then yeah, you can kind of do away with the Copa America
Yeah,
analysis
exactly. No,
because
everybody goes through a bad run of form, you know?
exactly.
I
So
mean, yeah.
in the way that Jacob Schaffelberg and Mobito and all these guys kind of proved that Copa America wasn't a flash in the pan, wasn't a one-time thing, I think he's gonna have to prove that Copa America was a one-time thing,
Yeah,
and that this is the
agree.
kind of Kyle Larin you're gonna get, not Copa America
Yeah.
Kyle Larin.
Honestly, I think I've probably been critical of him even longer than just Copa America. I think generally in 2024, I just have struggled to get on board. And obviously, he played under different coaches, different systems with the men's national team, and was definitely struggling with his club play as well, which is kind of unusual, I guess I would say for him. Typically he's
Mhm,
been a starter and he's been kind of really important for his given club, aside from a time or two here or there. But I actually, like I had said, I kind of thought that the striker was going to be the most vulnerable position as far as kind of who is Jesse Marsh going to be able to kind of rely upon. And I thought, with two strikers who, got called up to the squad in Afrifa and Oluwase, that those were potentially kind of two players who, if they were able to make their mark, could unseat a veteran like Kyle Larin, because at the end of the day, Jesse Marsh has no allegiance to Kyle Larin. It's
yeah,
not as though he's played under him for any given amount of time. Of course, he's done such incredible things for this national team. To just unseat him would be, you can't do that, I mean, the coach can do what they want, but it would definitely be taken very poorly.
mhm,
Um, but I agree with you. Yesterday, he seemed to be completely reinvigorated. I thought it had been like a very lethargic year from him so far, but he seemed to be absolutely bought in, which is, of course, what you want to see from your veterans and from your players who maybe aren't like giving or aren't getting everything they need in their club minutes. They're able to show up and they're able to kind of turn that switch on for national team play. Not saying that he's not performing for his club, but I'm not really following what he's doing very closely. I just mean in the sense of like that's not holding him back.
yeah. I still think there's a debate to be had between, having him versus, should they get one, a proper ball winning midfielder.
Mhm.
I still think that's a very worthwhile debate to have just because I
Mhm.
think that against top teams, the midfield does at times lack balance,
Yeah.
but in games like this, or in games where you're expecting to have the majority of the ball, and,
Mhm.
throughout the Gold Cup, where you're going to be playing teams in CONCACAF that are respectfully
Yeah.
not going to be at Canada's level, having a two striker system with a Kyle Larin that's playing like this is significantly better.
And definitely more fun to watch.
So much more fun. This is the most fun I've had watching Kyle Larin in so long, So
yeah, agree. Since, the World Cup qualification vibes, I would say,
World
which,
Cup,
that
World
was
Cup quali Kyle
that
Larin
was like a fever dream.
was something else, man.
Indeed, indeed. All right, and last but not least of our starting 11, of course, we have Jonathan David, author of the game-winning goal for Canada. Another player, perhaps, who's had some iffy moments, a little bit some quieter times in recent matches for Canada, and maybe who was also kind of coming a little bit under the microscope, although not as much as some of his other teammates. I can start if you want. I also thought that he was incredibly involved last night. He also forced several saves from poor Patrick Schulte, who was kind of hung out to dry a little bit last night. He was rather left on his own. I thought that he was always, I thought the runs that he was making were phenomenal. I thought that he and Laren just found that chemistry again so that they weren't like stepping on top of each other or getting in each other's way or kind of being a redundancy to each other. Um, Obviously the goal that he scored, he both intercepted the ball and then went on to score the resulting goal, which what more can you ask from your striker in a high pressing system? I don't know. Super important for him to get that goal, I think. And I really I understand like this is not a normal the ball is round. Like we've just been here like having a love
Smiling?
in. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I feel a little bit weird. I'm just like, yeah, positive vibes. We're so happy. Everyone's great. But truly, I don't know what I could reproach. So, I was very thrilled by Jonathan David's game yesterday
Yeah,
as
I
well.
think that, that second striker slash 10 that he's kind of been playing under Jesse Marsh.
Mhm.
Not a 10. He's definitely more of a second striker
Yeah.
right behind Kyle Larin. Um, I didn't love it, given, how good he is at finding the right spot in front of goal
Mhm.
at Lille, but he's getting there. I do think that there are still some moments where he does look a bit out of position and doesn't look to be
Mhm.
super comfortable. But when it mattered, really good composure finding Jacob Schafferberg on the first goal. Obviously, when you put him in that situation, he's going to score in that second goal.
Yeah.
So there were really good moments. I think overall, I want to see just a bit more positional work, but that's going to come with time, right?
Yeah.
Because he's used to being the lone striker at Lille. He's used to being the guy that the target
Yeah.
man, everything like that. So I do think that's going to come with, you know, with time
Yeah.
and literally just repetition. But by the time the 2026 World Cup rolls around, I expect him to be fully flying in that position. And if everything we see is looked at under the microscope of or through the lens of how will this look like in 2026, I'm already so much more excited than I could have ever possibly thought to have been this time a year ago, you know?
Yeah.
So if this is Canada 2 years out or a year and a half out from the World Cup, add all those windows, add all the friendlies they're gonna get because they're host countries with some top level teams, hopefully.
Mhm.
Fingers crossed, everyone is fit. I really, really, really I can't see
Are you
any
gonna
reason
make
not to be
an early and bold
n
prediction?
yeah, World Cup champions. No. I can't see any reason why you shouldn't be excited and sorry, Eve, but, like, really optimistic about the 2026 World Cup if this is them 2 years out. Say
Okay,
it.
fine.
Say it.
Fine, Elias. Fine.
Oh, yeah.
Fine.
La
Fine.
la last show and we got Eve being optimistic. Look at that. Mark your calendars, my
It's
friend.
a small sample size, but I like the sample. Okay? That's the best I can do. That's the best you're gonna get
Get
from
on
me.
board the hype train, get on early.
Oh,
We're rolling.
there we go. We got a lot of hype trains here though with the ball is round. Like
Oh, yeah.
we're gonna need to add some more conductors.
This is
Um,
this is by far the most solid one we
yeah,
have, I think.
agree. No, this is definitely my favorite iteration of Canada's men's national team that I've watched so far. But let's talk about our subs. So first and foremost, we have Rachel Rea, who of course did wind up playing more of the match than Alistair Johnston at the right back position. I thought, I thought it was like a more composed Richie Larea. Like he didn't get worked up. He didn't,
Yeah,
accidentally talk
weird.
himself into a yellow card. I thought it was like a very serene Richie Larea, if you
It
will.
was weird, man.
No, it was
Like,
good.
that's why it was weird. 'Cause it was good. But yeah, I mean, look, I mean, you have Christian Pulisic on your side. It's never gonna be an easy in an America jersey, it's never gonna be an easy
Yeah.
assignment. And yeah, like you said, right, he was just cool as hell the entire game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love that he can switch it on when he
Yeah,
has to,
totally.
but this game I don't think needed
I
it,
don't think
and
the
the fact
vibe
that he
was
didn't
there
bring
for
it
that, yeah.
exactly, and the fact that he didn't bring it out was like, okay, yeah, sure,
Yeah. No, it made
love
sense.
it.
Yeah. Overall, like I liked it. I didn't think that he did anything like terribly flashy or anything like that in the match, but he did the job that he had to do. There weren't a ton of chances. Yeah. So I would just give a casual thumbs up. I was glad to see honestly a serene Mitchell Ray, because I feel like in recent matches, he like that was almost like his shtick of sorts. And there is definitely a time and a place, and God knows in CONCACAF, there's absolutely a time and a place to, I don't know, be masculine. I don't know how to describe it. Um,
To
but
unleash the Hulk, you know?
yes, exactly. But it's good to see that kind of that other side of him, like
Mhm.
that calm and composed, because I think it also makes you appreciate his game more. Next up, we have Liam Miller, who entered along with several other players in the 67th minute for Jacob Schaffelberg. He also, I think, had a really interesting Copa America, and he's kind of been hot and cold with this national team. But I think he's in discussions for that position, but I do think that right now Jacob Schaffelberg is the holder of that position de facto. But for Liam Miller, like I kind of felt like the tempo was winding down when he entered the game, and I
Mhm.
don't necessarily think that suits his style as well, because of course the US were also subbing on like all their attacking firepower that they had because they
Yeah.
were losing. And so I don't know that he necessarily got to show off his talents to the best of his ability, because kind of Canada's mode was also switching a little bit as a byproduct of that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I'm kind of ambivalent towards Liam Miller. I
Okay.
think that he's had good moments, but at the end of the day, I'm eh, like he's doing all right, but at the end of the day, even as a sub, I don't get on the edge of my seat when I see him come on, you know? He
Mhm.
doesn't he's had moments where he's had moments where you're like, "Oh, okay, that was interesting." But they're
Yeah.
far too far apart and, far apart and few in between or whatever the expression
Yeah.
is, I don't
Yeah, yeah.
know. But, especially with now you have Ali Ahmed fit,
Mhm.
you have Tajon Buchanan coming back to training, who's expected to coming back sooner than expected. You have all these players in
Mhm.
his position and with his profile coming back.
Mhm.
I wouldn't be surprised to see him slide down the depth chart a little bit
Yeah.
because, I mean, there's only so much that just kinda getting by will get you.
I agree. I do agree overall. And then there may be other systems played, at times perhaps Jesse Marsh chooses to play like a 3-5-2 or something to that effect. And you do
Mhm.
always feel that, that wide left, if there's only going to be one wide left player, it will be Alfonso Davies. So
Exactly.
it does almost feel like you are kind of third in the pecking order, if anything. Um, but nonetheless, I mean, I do think it's still absolutely worthwhile to keep him in the mix. Like, I'm not sure who else could come up right now, at least. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see with Sam Adekugbe coming back into the fold if Alfonso Davies does perhaps move up the pitch. In certain circumstances, if nothing, hard to say, obviously, but otherwise, I really can't think of like who else would do at least a serviceable job for Canada at the left midfield position right now.
Shackelberg
Uh,
every minute ever. I don't care.
the
Just never
man's
take him
got
off.
man's got to rest at some point.
The regular season is for him to rest, and then he could play during the international breaks. That's fine.
Okay, okay, well, you take that up with Nashville SC,
I'm
okay?
sure Nashville's totally cool with it if we ask
Yeah.
Nash. think they'll be okay. I think they'll take it.
I'm sure. Next up, we have Jonathan Osorio, who also entered at the 67th minute for Steve Eustachio. And I will say, like, it was noticeable when Steve Eustachio left the pitch.
Mhm.
Yeah, I will say that. Like, I felt like the midfield was less locked down. Because, the US was not getting very much joy out of that midfield at all with Mathieu Choinière and Steve Eustachio together. But I do feel like things opened up a bit more. And again, perhaps that was by virtue of just kind of the relentless attack that the US was kind of moving toward due to the scoreline. Um, but I did feel like I don't know. It's hard to come in, I think, after Steve Eustachio, and then it's hard not to just compare Osorio's performance to Eustachio's, and that's not a fair comparison to make at all. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be fair to compare hardly anybody on this national team to Eustachio in the midfield. So I'm gonna see. Maybe you can put it more eloquently than I just did.
Well, I mean, first things first, you wanna know a crazy stat that I just found out? Jonathan Osorio is 32 years old.
Yes, he is.
Where did the time oh my god, I feel like that was crazy. But yeah, that was
He's
just weird.
younger
I
than
I
me,
thought
so
he
if you feel old, Elias, like
I
I'm
I thought
decrepit then.
I thought he was, like, 28 maybe? Anyway, 32 is
Okay, well, he's aging like a fine wine in Elias's eyes. So if he listens to the
no,
balls
no, I
round, I
mean,
hope he's thrilled to know.
I just didn't think he's that old, but yeah, I mean, look, I think it's also the psychology of the game, right? They
Mhm.
conceded that really flimsy goal that was technically offside, and VAR may or may not have overruled it was if there was VAR. So I think the psychology
Yeah,
there was kind of just like, just don't blow the lead,
sure.
because they really were on cruise control until then, right? It
Yeah.
really was kind of just like, and I think if it was still 2-0 when, at that 67th minute substitution, I really think that we would have been able to see a bit more from Osorio. I didn't
Yeah.
hate
That's a good
from
point.
him. I think when
Mhm.
they did find time in the final third, he was kind of there and present and did play some interesting balls in. But
Mhm.
yeah, like you said, right, when you're on the back foot and you're kind of just now just like, just don't blow it. I think it brings a
Mhm.
different kind of player out, right? And it was definitely a lot more conservative than what we would have hoped for.
Yeah. Yeah, overall I agree, but, I'd be curious, like you said, if he entered at a different scoreline, what
Mhm.
would what would we have seen instead? So, anyway, at the end of the day, like, this is a friendly, like, I'm not, you know, judging anything too harshly. Um All right, our other 67th minute sub was Tani Oluwase, who came in for Kyle Larin. And he also, I thought, had like a rather interesting Copa America. Didn't necessarily get on the score sheet, but definitely, I think, still managed to find some very interesting spaces to get himself in front of the keeper. And I kind of thought it was just a continuation of that yesterday for him. He did find himself at one point in a really interesting situation with the goalkeeper, but unfortunately, I think probably waited too long to take a shot. And so, obviously, as well, combined with Kyle Laren's very, very good 67 minutes yesterday, I think Kyle Laren's position is probably still safe on the
Yeah.
pitch for now. But yeah, for me, this was largely like a continuation, I think, of his Copa America. And obviously, when you're relegated to entering in a substitute situation, unless the match happens to just be tied, then you kind of enter when your team is either like giving it all to score or, they're, like you said, related to Osorio, they're kind of just not throwing that much effort at the goal, as was the case when he entered yesterday. So he didn't necessarily get like a ton of chances, but all the same, like I do think he still managed to get himself into some interesting positions. But I think we could still benefit from a bit more of a clinical touch from him.
Yeah, I agree. I really like what he did. I
Hmm.
think that for someone with his frame, he's incredibly elegant.
Yeah.
He's like 6'3", I think so. He's a
Oh
tall
yeah.
kid. So yeah,
Yeah.
he's tall. I mean, he's definitely imposing, and I think he brings a really nice touch. But like you said, right? You got to finish your chances, right?
Yeah.
So I think once he gets that first one, it'll kind of be like
So, like the duck off
sigh
your
of
back kind of
relief.
thing.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think that'll hopefully. I'd love to see him start against Mexico and kind of
Yeah,
just
that'd be
make.
interesting. Oh, yeah, that'd be
I'd
interesting.
love to see a really heavy rotation. To
Yeah.
see some different faces against Mexico. I mean, you got your big win
Okay.
against the US, so
Yeah.
I mean, by all accounts, unless you lose like 6-0 to Mexico, I think this window is a success.
Yeah.
So I mean, why not rotate the squad, right? Give some starts to FIFA to like to everybody that you
Mhm.
really want to kind of get a better idea of what they can bring. So yeah,
Mhm.
why not? Go for it. Completely rotate the squad. Have fun with it.
There we go. Okay. Mm, tall order there from Elias for Jesse Marsh. Okay. I think really the final sub who like we're gonna be able to quote unquote analyze would be Joel Waterman, who entered in the 70th minute as Derek Cornelius had to leave due to an injury. He's obviously been in rather torrid form for Montreal as of late. So I'm not gonna lie, I almost bit my poor little fingernails, which I spent too much money on to be biting. Um, when I saw him coming in, because I was like, oh God, please don't give up a penalty. Just because things unfortunately have not been going his way for Montreal, but perhaps the change of scenery, may end up doing him good. What did you make of his performance?
I was kind of on the same boat
Yeah,
where I was happy to see him come on, but I was also like, please, for the love of God, have a good shift.
yeah,
And yeah, I think he did. I think that his ball playing ability with
mm-hmm,
Bombito's athleticism, I think they complemented each other really well. I think Bombito covered for where Joel Otterman lacks a little bit, and
mm-hmm,
I think Waterman maybe brought a little bit of calmness on the ball,
yeah,
that they didn't really have because again, like we said, this isn't the most technically proficient. I mean, they're
no,
good and they're good enough to play off from the back and kind of keep
mm-hmm,
the rhythm going, but it's not exactly that's not what their strongest points are, right? They're defensively an incredibly sound back line, but it's not prime Barcelona or anything, right? And I think Joe
yeah,
Warman brought a little bit of composure on the ball, so I think that they really balanced each other out quite well for the
yeah,
last minutes, and he didn't do that much, but I
no,
think that's also kind of a good thing because it meant that they kind of handled it.
mm-hmm,
So especially after that goal, I think Canada kind of handled it a lot better. There were some moments where maybe the US was on the counterattack, but nothing really came of it.
yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's probably just a good thing for Joel Waterman to kinda get a shift in with no real catastrophes is
Yeah, I'm sure it must have been refreshing.
exactly, it's like, what's that like? But I
Mm,
think it's just, having a 30 minute span where nothing went wrong, it was kinda just
yeah,
like was.
it was
And I
just a
think that
normal
was
day at the office.
exactly, and I think he probably really needed that
Yeah,
just from a
agree.
confidence standpoint, but also just, it's good to see.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
It's also nice
No,
to see that he was the one picked to come on of all the center
yeah.
backs, right? That's also, like, where he is in his standing on the depth chart.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a really good point because obviously Kamal Miller was available and Kamal Miller is also a left-footed center back. So you almost kind of would have thought that he would have been the choice. So yeah, in hindsight, I didn't think that hard on it, but that is a really good point that you made. Definitely very interesting. All right, and we did have 2 other players who subbed in. Of course, they were the very recent call-ups, Steven Afrifa, who actually plays in Kansas City, so very familiar, of course, with the stadium and where the match was being played, and Montreal's own Nathan Saliba, who they both entered very deep into stoppage time, so we are not going to try to analyze their performance whatsoever. But how interesting is it to see these guys get cap titleized?
I love it.
Okay, he's
I love
thrilled.
it. I mean,
Perfect.
that's also I mean, yes, Steven Afrifa, it's another young, exciting winger. I think it's gonna be,
Yeah.
interesting to see, if he does get minutes against Mexico as well, maybe more than, like, 2,
Mhm.
to see what he can kind of bring. But that's also look, it was inevitable he was gonna end up in the national team picture at some point. I'm happy it's sooner rather than later. With the year he's been having, I think he's earned it. And again, right, he brings a profile that's not super common in the midfield, like on the national team right now. He does have that ability to play that six, to play that ball winner,
Yeah.
that still is able to keep the pace and drive the ball forward. So yeah, I was thrilled to see him, and obviously, hopefully, just like if Freefer gets more than 2 minutes against Mexico, maybe even a start. No, I doubt it. I doubt he'll start, but at least, maybe even like a nice 20-25 minutes as a sub would be really nice to see because I
Mhm.
think he's absolutely earned it. And you know, we've seen him be mature beyond his years already,
Yeah,
but have him on the national scene would be even better.
agree. Um, right, yeah. So that's our men's national team. That's certainly the players. As for Jesse Marsh, for like the game he had as manager, we've just been gushing for an hour straight. But any notes on Jesse Marsh, how he set up his team, tactics, any thoughts on his sub choices, etc., etc. Anything to add there? You can continue the love fest if you so desire.
I mean, nothing really to and take umbrage with. I mean,
Yep.
kudos for kind of sticking to his guns
Yep.
when maybe some of the finer points of his super high pressing didn't go that well in Copa America. I mean, yeah, they made it to the semifinals, but the pressing itself wasn't really that great.
Mm-hmm.
So kudos to him for kind of sticking with it, and
Yeah.
it seems to have taken much better this window. So it's clear that the players are growing with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's still a little bit too early to kind of get a full.
You're not starting a hype train there yet, is what you're
I'm
saying?
starting the hype train on the national team as a whole.
Okay.
Jesse Marsh specifically, what I like is that they brought in a club coach
Yeah.
because one thing we talked about after John Herdman left is what they need a manager that knows his shit, right?
Yeah.
Tactically, right?
Yeah.
They need another man. They don't need another leader of men. They don't need another,
Bring out some
racer. Like
sword or whatever.
exactly.
Yeah.
So they need someone from an X's and O's
Yeah.
perspective is really
Yeah, because
really
I
really
think
top down.
this generation of Canadian men's national team players, like the level that they're playing at,
Exactly.
they can pick up those tactics so quickly. When we had 11 unattached FC players on the pitch, it was a little bit of a different story. But sorry, Elias. But yeah, I agree with you in this day and age. It's definitely I mean, it's almost not utilizing also the mental acuity of these
Mhm.
players who are
Absolutely.
playing at some of the highest levels available. So that is a really good point to bring up. But yeah, I was really curious as to how this match would go because rumor had it that Jesse Marsh was one of the candidates for the U.S. men's national team job when it had been vacated, like sort of vacated. I don't know how to describe it.
Technically vacated.
Yeah, like there that weird murky was Greg Berhalter still the coach or not coach era. And so like he had been rumored to be like very, very a very top candidate, and obviously that fell through. But I think he probably is feeling good about his choice after yesterday's match, I hope.
How can
Yeah.
you not, right?
Exactly, 100%. No, overall, I thought it was a really successful match. Obviously, they'll be playing against Mexico on Tuesday evening in Dallas, um, but so kind of a neutral venue, but kind of an away venue, I would imagine, or kind of just.
Just have it in Canada, man.
I
Come
wish
on.
they will be hosting Panama in October, so
Yeah, but like, why in a neutral ground? It's an internet. It's not Gold Cup. It's a friendly. Just go some. Anyway,
okay.
we're
Anyway,
not gonna get into this. It's
no,
a
no,
whole other
no.
can of worms.
That is a whole other can of worms. I agree with you. But that being said, I think I expect Mexico to come out with a lot more attitude than the US came out with yesterday because the US, like, that was not normal, what we
No,
saw
that
from
was
them
terrible.
yesterday. Obviously, the squad that they are under an interim manager themselves, and obviously the squad that was called up was a very, very young squad. Like, I think 8 of their starting 11 were under 23 or something to that effect. So I do think Mexico, as a regular CONCACAF foe, will be, I think, a much more interesting test for Jesse Marsh on Tuesday, hopefully. And I think probably a lot more, of that spicy in match CONCACAF stuff to contend with. So certainly very, very curious to see what he does. I will be very curious as well to see if he does those wholesale rotations that you are arguing for.
Hopefully.
Um, so anything else to add on the match, Elias, before we move on to our outstanding question here?
No, just happy. Happy, happy,
Just
happy.
happy. It's a rare episode of The Ball is Round where it is a unanimously happy vibe. All right. So let's roll over to a question that we got from Amin. It is on a different topic, but obviously, this being TBIR, it is certainly still relevant. So Amin asks us basically, with what tone is Gabriel Gervais going to meet the media tomorrow after having conceded 9 goals in 2 matches just after declaring that not making the playoffs with this particular squad would be difficult to digest, without, of course, even mentioning the season ticket renewal, which does not seem to be going well at all. And this is related to CF Montreal, which we haven't talked about today, but apparently the president and 18 other roles, I think, acting sporting director, whatever else, will be meeting with the press tomorrow, with apparently like no particular agenda. ... So, Elias, as a member of the press, did you want to give your 2 cents on this?
My first thought when I saw that was, oh no.
Oh
But then,
no, okay.
but if you look at the media schedule that's sent out to every member of the press, they say like later that week they say, you know, media availability with head coach Laurent Courtois.
Right. Okay,
So
so you don't think it's gonna be, well, I
I
mean,
don't think
usually
it's
there's a
gonna be about that.
statement of a sacking before the person,
N
like, that would be
Yeah, but
really, really weird to just show up and be like, "Yeah, and
I
we
thought they
fired the
would do it like the
coach."
morning of because they let sometimes, last minute or whatever. But I honestly think it might be a Corey Ray thing.
You
The
think?
window is now closed,
Okay.
and it very well look, I mean, we have yet it's still early, but it seems like a very positive window in who they brought in.
Mhm.
And I think that it could be again,
I kinda
related.
see it as like a
That's the
damage
only
control
thing.
sort of thing, but go on.
Damage control, but the thing is, the damage control would be it's even even Olivier Renard didn't really come out to do damage
No.
control when it was at its worst, and like last year there was some really bad moments, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know if it's a damage control thing because at the end of the day, what does he have to talk about with regards to damage control?
Or what
That's
what
that
could he say that's positive?
right. The window is closed, so
Yeah.
the damage control would be more of a Laurent Courtois question than a
Right.
Gabriel Gervais question.
No, I
So
just
yeah,
kinda mean like damage as in like the general vibe.
the general vibe does need damage control, that's for sure.
Yeah.
As for the season ticket renewal, I'm really curious to see some actual numbers because obviously, if you're on Twitter, you see
It's
tweet
all
after
you're
tweet,
hearing
and
is
it's
not
all
coming
you
back, not
see,
coming back,
right?
not coming back, yeah.
And I don't see 18,000 tweets, but I do see a lot of them.
Yep.
So I'm curious to see how many unseen, um, you know, people
Non-renewals or
abandoning
yeah.
non-renewals are. Um,
And conversely, how many people are just like, "Okay, this is the echo chamber where we all come to announce that we're not renewing, so I guess I'll
exactly.
just keep my mouth quiet because I am renewing." Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, if you go by just Twitter, it's
Mhm.
very easy to see that, oh, Stats is going to be
Yeah,
empty next
apparently,
year.
yeah, they're gonna be playing in front of,
There's
like,
going to
5
be
people next year.
5,000 season ticket holders next year, apparently.
Yeah.
But
Um,
I mean, it's obviously going to go down.
yeah,
Look,
it's gonna be addressed for
right?
sure.
We talked about it at the beginning of the season. What's it going to take for them to kind of keep this many season ticket holders? And number one was on field quality, which we respectfully had
Got the
not seen.
antithesis of?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, um, but I am very curious to see. I mean, I think it's just gonna go back like around what it was
Yeah.
pre-Messi. I think
Yeah.
that'll kind of go back to status quo.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
there's a lot of unanswered questions, and I think it's going. I think they're probably gonna touch on Corey Ray a little bit,
I
but
mean, I
it
think,
really
yeah,
does
it would
kind of
be
seem out
topical
of
to
the
do
blue for
so.
him to address the media.
Yeah, very
For
much.
I mean, Olivier Renard didn't really do a post-window
No.
availability usually. I mean, he
No,
did
but
once, but it was
yeah.
not really a thing, so
Yeah, and I understand, like, as sporting director as well, like, he would just kinda make himself available, like, on a, semi-regular, we'll say, semi-regular, like, it wasn't weekly, but, it was here and there.
once every, like, 6 weeks or something, 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, but I think the part of it is, like, Gabriel Gervais is, even if he's wearing many hats, like, it's not as though he can just wear the one hat when he goes to speak to the media. Like,
That's true.
they're gonna wanna ask him questions about things that touch him as the president, also things that touch him on the sporting side.
Mhm.
in the current climate. So certainly will be interesting to see if or what comes out of that. And I'm sure if there are any salient points, you guys will address them next week on the next episode. And that's all we have, actually. That is all we have. It's a short episode. Obviously a pretty quiet week.
Short and sweet, literally.
Short and sweet. Good point. Yeah. It was just kind of a quiet week. Only had one team in action. That match was a friendly, and it was a pretty clear cut, not a ton of debate to be had on what took place on the pitch there. So with that being said, this brings my run on The Ball is Round to a close. So yeah.
End of an era.
End of an era.
Would you like to say some parting words?
I didn't prepare anything, so no.
Well, I'm putting you on the spot now. If you have any parting words to our dear listeners.
Well, obviously, it is just you here with me this evening, Elias, but certainly I know I'm leaving this project in very, very good hands, and I'm very excited to see what you and Hattie and Andy will make of it going forward. The Ball is Round has grown so much since I first joined. 100, I think it was about the 20th episode or so. So I'm going to say 170-ish episodes ago. And I think you all will be able to take it and grow and really run with it and turn it into something fantastic. And of course, even though I won't be hosting, I'll be an avid listener and possibly disagree.
Right? Don't be a stranger, right?
I'll be sliding in with my no. Stop with your optimism.
Well, if you ever want to stop by, right? Don't be a stranger. You want to pop in and yell at us and
I appreciate, and I do appreciate
talk some shit.
Holy Gale telling me that you will be missed. However, Holy Gale has regular direct access to me, so fear not, Holy Gale. I'm not going anywhere in the big scheme of things. All right. Well, with that being said, of course, The Ball is Round will always remain free content for everyone to listen to and enjoy. But if you do want to help the guys grow the project, there is a Patreon if you feel so inclined to contribute. So signing off for the very last time, thank you all for joining us this evening, and stay tuned next week for another episode without Eve of The Ball is Round.